Hello everyone, this is Madhusudan Raj. Today is 25th August 2016 and I am again here in front of you to discuss few important issues which are going to impact the Indian economy very heavily going forward in the future. The issue that I want to talk about today is this new tax regime of the Narendra Modi's NDA government, the GST, the Goods and Service Tax regime. So what we will do in today's economic report is I will go through the claims that the Narendra Modi government is making about this goods and service tax regime, and one by one I will critically analyze all those claims of the government. So we will start with the first claim of the Modi government. After passing the GST bill in last a couple of weeks back, the Finance Minister Arun Jaitley was telling the newspaper that this is the regime of one nation, one tax. This is the regime of a simplified tax system, because this goods and service tax is going to subsumed like 14-15 different kind of taxes under its regime. So that Jaitley and Modi is saying that this is a simplified tax regime. Then they are saying that obviously goods and service tax will create one market in the Indian economy. They are also saying GST will be basically boost, of course, the economic growth rate. After passing the goods and service tax bill, already two BJP ruled states have kind of ratified the goods and service tax bill. Assam government and the Gujarat government a couple of days back ratified the bill in the local assembly, and the local finance minister of the BJP government in Gujarat was also saying that this is good for the economy, this is going to boost economic growth, etc. We will see in a while how much truth is there in these kind of claims of the government. These are some of the claims of the Modi government. So let's start with the first one. They are saying that this is one nation, one tax regime. Of course, this is not true. Apart from goods and service tax, of course, there are so many other different kind of taxes. For example, income tax, or for example, service tax. For example, excise duty, custom duty, this duty and that duty. So apart from paying the goods and service taxes, the Indian customers and the businesses, the private sector is also going to continue to pay all these taxes. So saying that goods and service tax regime presents one tax, one nation, one tax regime is absolutely false. And as far as talking about the goods and service tax itself, there are two types of taxes, as being clarified by the finance minister and other people in the government itself. There will be state goods and service tax, as GST, as well as the central goods and service tax, that is CGST. So obviously this is not one nation, one tax regime. And as I said, we will see in a while that even if it is supposedly one nation, one state, one tax regime, how is that good? Can we kind of measure the goodness of any tax regime by saying that it's just one tax? Whether having a one tax itself is good for the economy, we will see that in a while. So obviously the claim that GST represents one nation, one tax regime is obviously false, because in GST itself there are two different types of taxes, that is a state GST and the central GST. And apart from that, as I said, there are myriad of many different taxes already imposed on the already heavily burdened taxpayers of this country. Anyway, they are saying that this is like simplified tax regime. The details of this tax regime, how it will be implemented and how it will impact the businesses, is yet not clear, but many businesses are already kind of complaining that instead of simplifying the paperwork, instead of GST being a simplified tax regime, it is actually going to complicate the matters more. For example, a few weeks back there were news in the local newspaper in my city, Surat, where the local chamber of commerce was complaining that now they will have to fill more papers, not at one place, but because there is state GST and central GST, so obviously they will have to fill the papers at couple of more places. And likewise, many businesses are still not clear that how much paperwork is going to be involved in all these activities. But what is important over here is, and this is where I want to come to the main point, that if the tax regime is simplified, does that really matter? Does that really mean that it is good for the people? The whole idea that a tax can be good for the economy is absolutely ridiculous. A tax is a burden on the productive people of this Indian society, of the Indian economy. Any kind of tax imposed on them, whether in terms of myriad of 5-6 taxes or one taxes, is obviously not good, because if you understand economics, then an economy will flourish. Economy will flourish when productive people are given a lot of freedom, when they have incentive to do hard work, and that is only possible when the productive people are allowed to keep the fruits of their hard labor. They have the incentive when they are going to make profit out of their hard work. If the taxes, if the fruits of their hard labor is going to be taxed away by the government, whether that is in terms of income tax, of service tax, or goods and service tax, for example, that is not going to encourage the productive people of this country. So a tax regime can never be good for the economy. What is good for the economy is having no taxes to begin with. For example, when businesses are free to do their activities, only one proviso is that they are not going to harm other people, and when they are free, and freedom's mean is it is a negative concept, so when they are free to do their business, then they will flourish. Imposing, removing 5-6 different kind of taxes, and instead of that imposing another new tax regime, is not an improvement on the given situation. It's you are just replacing so many taxes with one taxes, but taxes are still there on people, on productive people. So the incentive for doing any kind of work is not going to be there. The incentive is there when people understand that they can keep the fruits of their hard labor. Right now, the Modi government is hell bent on kind of imposing taxes on anyone. For example, they have already increased the service taxes by a couple of percentage since coming to power, in the guise of imposing, for example, global warming tax, or the educational tax, or the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan kind of tax, or for example clean Ganga river tax, and helping the farmer tax. So the service tax that was something like 8-9% has gone up by several points, percentage points, and it is right now 15%, and that is likely to go up. And as I said, as we will discuss in a while, that GST, what will be the tax rate under the GST regime is still not clear. Many states are asking for a higher tax rate, because if they are going to have a lower tax rate of something like 18%, that is going to result into lower revenues for the local states. So they are asking the government, the central government, to impose higher tax rate in the GST, in the goods and service tax regime. So if that is going to happen, how is that is going to be good? And remember, finance minister did not give any assurance about what kind of tax is going to be imposed under GST rule. Anyway, so as I said, if the tax regime is simple, that doesn't mean that the economy is going to do good. What is important for us to understand is that the government, instead of as I said, trying to increase their spending, and for that increase their revenue by like simplifying the tax regime, they should cut down on their expenditure. The size of the government must shrink, and that is what is good for the Indian economy, and that is what is good for any economy for that matter. If the size of the government is not shrinking, if the expenses of the governments are not going down, then that is never going to be good for the economy. That is not positive for the economy. The more the government spends, the more private resources it siphons off from the productive people and is wasting the unproductive activities. Government can never boost the economic growth. It's the private sector, it's the market that is responsible for producing goods and services, and they are responsible for any kind of progress that the economy is going to experience in future. So a simplified tax regime, if it is going to increase the revenue of the government, then it is not good for the Indian economy. So having a simplified tax regime is not necessarily good for the economy. Anyway, they are saying that GST will be lower. For example, that's what they're promising everybody right now. But as I said, finance minister is not promising and not giving any kind of assurances that the GST tax rate will be lower. And even if it is going to start lower, what's the guarantee that it will remain lower going in future? Because we all know right now that the Indian government is, bankrupt, and that is the reason why they are, trying every bit hard to, kind of increase their revenue, because the Modi government wants to spend money like crazy on infrastructure project, etc. because they think that that government spending, the fiscal policies, what is going to revive the economic growth of India, and that is going to pull out the Indian economy out of the recession through which that it is going on right now. But obviously all those economic ideas are kind of nonsensical. Government spending, fiscal policies are never responsible for getting the economy out of recession. In fact, they are responsible for bringing the economy into recession. That is the reason why the Indian economy is into recession. As I said, the size of the government is very big right now in India. That size must shrink if the economy has to flourish in future. But anyway, as I said, there is no guarantee that the tax rate will be lower. Even if they start lower, they will continue to increase in future. Remember, when in 1913 the American government imposed the taxes on the Americans for the first time, they also promised them that the tax rate will remain lower. But in last century itself, the taxes has gone up by tenfold, right? Like they started like 4% and now it is like 40%. So as I said, there is no promise. And as I said, even if they are going to impose lower taxes, taxes can never be good for the economy. Anyway, so the claim that GST, the taxes will be lower in goods and service tax is like a pipe dream. Anyway, what I'm saying is that all this claim, and as I said already, that the whole idea that any kind of tax regime is going to increase the economic growth rate of the country is absolutely ludicrous, because taxes are never going to increase the growth rate. It is going to hamper the growth rate, because it is going to take siphon off the resources from the productive sector, and that those resources are going to be wasted in the unproductive sector. And this whole idea that goods and service tax will create a single kind of market in the Indian economy is also kind of nonsensical, because a market is where there are no taxes. So if there is a tax, how can you create a free market economy by imposing a tax, or just substituting so many taxes with one more tax? A free market economy is where there is no government interference to begin with. There is no regulation, there is no control, because the free market forces themselves, right? The system of price and the system of profit and loss itself are the regulators of the businesses on the consumer. We don't need any kind of government regulators for that. We don't need any kind of taxes for free market economy. If the government is kind of serious in creating a one market, a single common market in the India, then they should remove all the taxation, as I said, right? They should just shrink their size, shrink their budget, shrink their spending, right, and remove the taxation. And that is how you're going to create free market, one market in the economy. Imposing one tax or substituting one tax for 10, 15 different kind of taxes is not going to create a free market or market anywhere in the world, for example. So the whole idea is like imposing a tax is creating one taxation or one market in India is like twisting the logic like anything. It's just totally nonsensical and totally hypocritical. Anyway, one more thing that I want to talk about here is that when they passed this bill, nobody was there, no politician was there who kind of opposed this bill. Everybody were into that, and they all kind of wholeheartedly gave their consent to this bill. There was no single vote against this bill in both Rajya Sabha as well as Lok Sabha. What this shows is that when it comes to plundering the people, productive people of this country, all the politicians belonging to all the parties are in it together. They all agree with that, because they are the state officials. And the reason and the kind of the fundamental system through which the state survives is plundering the productive people, what they call taxation. So when it comes to taxing the people, all the political parties are, they agree with each other. They are not going to, they will, have some little bit bickering here and there about what tax should be there, but nobody will, kind of oppose. There is no politician, not a single politician in the whole political, kind of system of India who will, oppose any kind of taxation on principles. That taxing people is not going to increase economic growth of this country. For example, there is nobody like, Dr. Ron Paul in India. Dr. Ron Paul, for example, the American, former American statesman and the candidate for American presidency in 2008 and as well as 12, and he's the one who is principally opposing any kind of tax regime. He is saying empathetically that you have to bring down the tax rate and bring down the government revenue and bring down the government expenditure, reduce the size of the government, and only that is going to be good for any economy. We don't have any such people in the whole Indian political system who opposes this kind of tax regimes on a principle basis. As I said, when it comes to looting the public, all political parties, are together into that. And not only that, remember in future what is going to happen is that if people are thinking that GST is going to help them, the businessmen are thinking that GST is going to help them, that is not going to be the case, because what will happen is that in future, if there is a kind of reduction in the revenue, the loot share of the state governments, then the state governments are going to impose new taxes. So if they are going to kind of do away with state sales tax, they already have state GST, but if that is going to result into reduction of the revenue, they will impose new taxation, because there is no stopping them from doing that, right? There is no clause in the GST that says that the states cannot impose their own taxes. So for example, the Gujarat government is already thinking of imposing 10% fat tax like Kerala did recently. They are saying that if there is reduction in the government's, state government's revenue, then they will next year impose the 15% fat tax in India, in Gujarat. So ultimately what is going to result, if you're going to have GST and you have to do away with other taxes, then the state government is going to impose more new taxes. So there is no guarantee whatsoever that the taxes are going to go down. Tax rates are not going to go down. In fact, you have to cough up more and more money in the coffers of the government. So overall, all in all, as I said, GST, obviously any kind of tax is not good for any economy. Forget about GST being good for the Indian economy. Going in future, what is going to happen is it is going to adversely impact the businesses. Businesses are already suffering in India, and when the next severe economic depression will hit the world economy, Indian businesses are going to suffer like anything. So right now, Narendra Modi government, instead of fulfilling the promise of looking after the economy, which they cannot, they are just busy in all kind of stupid things and kind of inciting hatred in the Indian communities. They're trying to divide everybody and rule over them, and they're trying to stalk kind of, they're drumming the war drums, and they're trying to start some kind of war with the neighbors. As I said, they're just trying to deflect the attention of people from the sagging economy and other local problems. Anyway, but as I said, GST is definitely not good for the Indian economy. No taxation can be good for any economy, and we have to continue to see more hardship in future, and government is kind of trying very hard to bring us all in the tax net, so they can rip us off more and more. That's the reason why they're pushing this Aadhaar card and everything. They're asking everybody to open up the bank account so nobody can escape. Ultimately, their dream is to kind of create a cashless economy where they can track all of our spending all the time, and they can tax us whenever they want to. Anyway, we will have to see whether the Indian people stand up to this kind of draconian measures of the Indian government, whether that is a Modi government or any other government, and they try to fight this thing. I'm sure these actions of government will not succeed in the end, but meanwhile they are going to try. Anyway, so with that, I'm wrapping up today's economic report, and I will come in front of you again to discuss more and more things as kind of they unravel in the Indian economy. Thank you very much for watching me. Goodbye.